With Josh Giddey now signed by the Chicago Bulls, one of the last things standing out for the Chicago Bulls is who's going to be the starting small forward. And while I've talked a little bit about that this offseason, we'll look at the case for each player between Isaac Okoro, Ayo Dosunmu, and Kevin Huerter to be the starting small forward for the Chicago Bulls next season. We're also going to look at how the smear campaign has already started for Josh Giddey. Some people are sore losers. We're talking about all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And I want to talk about the starting small forward position. Now, we do know that I think that the most likely candidates to be that starting small forward are Ayo Dosunmu, Isaac Okoro, and Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter, who finished last year as the starting small forward for the Chicago Bulls, I think has a bigger case than people are giving him credit for, mainly due to the strength how the Bulls finished the season. Of course, it was a smaller sample size, but also because of his ability to stretch the floor. Now, I think it comes down to, does Billy Donovan want to focus on offense or defense in that starting lineup? As Ayo Dosunmu and Isaac Okoro have shown an ability to also stretch the floor a little bit over the course of their careers. But let's start off talking about Kevin Huerter, right? And I think that there's an important reason on why Kevin Huerter could and probably should maintain being the starting small forward for the Chicago Bulls. As a starter last year for the Bulls, Kevin Huerter averaged 15.3 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 3.9 assists per game, and he made 3 3-pointers per game as a starter as well. He shot 41% from 3 as a starter. And when you look at how he played as a starter, it was a lot better than playing coming off the bench. As a bench player last year, he averaged 12.6 points, 2.6 rebounds, and 1.7 assists. Still made 3 3-pointers per game, but didn't shoot with the same efficiency he did as a starter. And that could come down to the open threes generated by Josh Giddey and Coby White's ability to drive. Now, the benefit of that would be that you do have a backup point guard now in Tre Jones who's able to still create pretty decently. Not at the same level as those other two guys, but he is still able to do that. So even if Kevin Huerter was coming off the bench, there's a chance that there's a chance he can keep that efficiency relatively the same. He went to 36% on field goal shooting percentage and 35% on three-pointers, where he shot 41% as a starter, right? Then you also look at the plus minus. He was plus 8.8 as a starter and 6.1 as a coming off the bench player, right? So, that's a strong case. And, the thing that I've looked at the most when I've talked about this is the fact that Billy Donovan may want to keep the starting 5 the same just because of the way that they finished the season, to see how much of that is going to be able to be kept up in an entirety of the season. And so therefore you may want to keep that. I think Kevin Huerter also plays really well in Billy Donovan's up-tempo pace, offense, and the spacing provided by that. And if we cut to the rim a little bit more, and that's going to be looked at as modest, and Giddey and Coby doing that a lot, like Kevin Huerter benefits from that, and he plays pretty well in that when it comes down to it. They played, the Bulls also won 13 of 19 games that Kevin Huerter started. So take that for what you will, right? So I think overall, like, Kevin Huerter does have his case to be the starter of the Chicago Bulls, and comes down a big point to chemistry as well. He was a really good connective player for the Chicago Bulls. That's a word that I always use when it comes down to Kevin Huerter, because the connectivity between him, Giddey, and Coby were really, really good. And I think, while it doesn't offer the most size or the most switchability defensively, what he brings offensively, and especially because the Bulls, kind of focus on offense, it's there, and those are strengths that you can't really ignore. Now, I think overall it's going to come down to how much Billy Donovan and this coaching staff want to prioritize adding some defense into the starting lineup. Ayo Dosunmu was not healthy, towards the end part of that season. Isaac Okoro wasn't on this team, and so I do think that, while Kevin Huerter, I would say probably as of right now, based off the things that I've said, is probably the favorite. Now, I still think it's going to be a competition coming into training camp of who's going to bring it. But, for people who say things like, oh my God, P. Will's definitely going to get a chance because of his contract. I think we've seen otherwise, right? And one thing I always say with P. Will, and we'll talk a little bit about him in this case too. The one thing a case against P. Will is that, yeah, P. Will was making $18 million as well last year, 19, whatever it is. And Julian Phillips was getting off the bench before him. Like there were several times in the last part of the stretch of that season that Julian Phillips was the first player off the bench before P. Will was off the bench. And so, hearing what we've heard this season, as well as nothing's going to be given to P. Will, he's going to have to earn it. The Bulls have kind of moved on from him being, a gifted part of this roster. But I do think P. Will coming in is still going to have a chance as well, which, all right, now we've talked about Kevin Huerter. Let's make a case for the other guys, right? And I think when you look at Ayo, P. Will, and Isaac Okoro, they are all more naturally defensively gifted than Kevin Huerter, right? Ayo's a solid passer as well, especially in transition. I'd probably say that he's a better passer and rebounder than Kevin Huerter as well. But the ability to stretch the floors, it's come and gone with Ayo. But let's start off with Isaac Okoro, right? The new acquisition by the Chicago Bulls. We just had a voicemail by Korn, I think last weekend, in regards to him asking about Isaac Okoro, and are people making kind of this a Javon Carter situation out of this, where he may not have a chance to start as much as people hope that he will, and he's just going to come in and kind of do his role, right? And to that, there's solid credit to that, right? Isaac Okoro started a career-low 22 games last season, right? And that was on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, they did acquire a player that was better than him and did pretty much the same things he did, but better, right? But when you look at it, he's 6'5", and, it is what it is. He did start whenever Max Strus was out of the lineup, and that is what it is. As a starter, Isaac Okoro averaged only 6.9 points, 2.6 rebounds, 1.6 assists as well. And when he was coming off the bench, the numbers stayed basically the same: 5.6 points, 2.2 rebounds, and 1 assist, right? And so Isaac Okoro and his stats, the stat sheet, doesn't really paint this great picture of this starting caliber player, especially because I don't think the Bulls are going to necessarily want to die off completely offensively, right? They're going to still want some offensive impact in that. And I do think, though, that, and I've said this multiple times, that Okoro does have a chance. And it comes down to, do they trust that the volume, if the volume of his shooting goes up, can the efficiency stay about the same? And that's a fair question to ask here. Now, if Okoro is in the starting lineup, it almost means that the Bulls are completely focused on defense in that. And with Kobe and Josh Giddey as your starting one and your starting two, there's a reason that you could say, hey, there's a reason to believe that it probably should be the case, right? That you probably should focus on defense. Okoro has never averaged double-digit points per game. Never, right? And at being 6'5", and this is where people, who say things like, well, why would Ayo start at small forward? He's a point guard. Ayo hasn't really been a point guard since his second year, where he started at point guard, and we quickly found out he's not a true point guard, right? He's not that type of point guard, and he's been better at the wing over the course of his NBA career. He just has been, right? And so the size difference between Ayo and Isaac Okoro isn't that much of a difference. And so, Okoro is a really good defender. And I love his mindset defensively. He's talked already about going out there and shutting down the other team's best scorer, right? And he's somebody who wants to do that. And thus, you give a little bit of credit defensively for that. Now, I would say this: if Okoro's going to stay in it's going to be in the starting lineup and stay in there, he's probably going to have to average at least 10 points per game. Now, that's not huge. When you look at his 2023-24, when he was basically a full-time starter, he started 42 out of 69 games. He averaged 9.4 points per game. So he's flirted with doing that before. I think, if the volume goes up a little bit and the efficiency stays the same, he can get to 10. I think that's a key mark for him. Now, he's not going to be the scorer that I think either Kevin Huerter or Ayo can be as a starter, but I do think that Okoro has his ability to stretch the floor and play really, really good defense. That's going to be the thing that has him there. And so I think that he has a case, but it comes down to that. Now, let's talk about Ayo Dosunmu, because Ayo brings a lot of the same things that Kevin Huerter does. Relatively, both 6'5". Isaac Okoro was more 220. I think Ayo Dosunmu was more like 215 now. Do not go to ESPN. Their weights have been wrong for years. They don't update them basically after their rookie years. So there you go on that one. And so, it comes down to the defensive versatility and also the mix. Ayo probably offers the best mix between offense and defense for potentially the starting lineup. And it depends on how Billy Donovan weighs that. Now, I do think also Billy Donovan coming off could value Ayo Dosunmu coming off the bench for the Chicago Bulls, and I can't knock him for that one. But As a starter last year, Ayo Dosunmu had some of the best numbers of all these guys as a starter. 26 games he did start, 14 points per game. He shot the ball 36% from three-point range, taking 4.5 per game. He shot the ball 52% from the field as a starter, 5 assists, 3.3, basically 3.5 rebounds, a steal and a half per game as well, and only 1 turnover per game. So, it comes down to Ayo as a starter. If you're looking at the starter numbers, he offers the best mix of offense and defense. And then when you look at his defensive splits, right? Not the defensive rating. I know people are going to go to defensive rating, but when you look at his on-ball defensive numbers, right? When you are less than 10 feet from the rim, he averages allowing a field goal shooting percentage of 46%, which is really freaking good. Usually you like to see around that. Usually around that area is going to be above 50%, but he's around 46%. And then greater from 15 feet from the basket, he allows a 38.9 field goal shooting percentage. So that is something that shows that Ayo Dosunmu is a better on-ball defender than these guys. And I like to use that number and look at it. Now, the defensive rating was not great for Ayo Dosunmu last year. And, the Bulls team defense plays a part into that as well. But, it's a sign for concern. Is that defense going to be able to stay up? I think that that's still fair to have a little bit of concern for that. But I think Ayo offers the best mix of offense and defense for the Chicago Bulls coming into the starting lineup. But you may want that creativity coming off the bench as well. And you may want that reliability coming off the bench. I think either way, Ayo's going to play close to 30 minutes per game. I think he's going to be one of those guys. He's always been trusted by Billy Donovan. I think he's going to continue to do that, be trusted by Billy Donovan, regardless of the role or the spot he's playing in. He's going to be playing near starter level minutes for Billy Donovan. That just is what it is. He's going to be playing near starter level minutes. The question comes down to it is, does Billy Donovan trust that in the starting lineup? And that's the question when it comes to Ayo. But I do think Ayo has a strong case as well to be the starting small forward. But then let's talk about the guy that nobody, as far as in Bulls fandom, really wants to talk about, having another opportunity to start. And while I've said myself, I'm not ready to just assume P. Will is going to have anything on this team. If he earns it, great. If P. Will comes into training camp and for some reason he's locked in and he stays locked in over the course of the season, that's good for the Bulls, right? And I will continue to say that. It's just that I'm at the point now where I don't bet on anything P. Will related. I don't give him credit for it. I don't think that he's going to come in and he's going to be some amazing player for the Bulls. That we've reached the point of the past that of optimism for P. Will, for me personally. Now, if he comes in and shows it, great. And I think, if you out of a 4-year-old player, if he's able to come in and bring offense and defense, that works. Now, I would be really interested to see if that now that Modest Buzelis is firmly entrenched as this team starting power forward, if P. Will has maybe dropped some weight this season to gain some of that agility back. Now, he was never the most agile player or the most mobile or limber player, but I do think he lost some of that by bulking up, trying to play power forward. Now, does he gain some of that? Now, I'm also somebody who doesn't think that, small forward is P. Will's true position, as some people say. I don't think he really has played that much differently at the small forward position. But if he's now come in focused with that and he brings it in training camp, great. And I do think P. Will, if he can bring the brand of defense that we've seen from him and he can add to that, getting back to being a player that can average, like I said with Isaac Okoro, 10 points per game. He brings more traditional size. He brings more of that. I think that there's a chance for P. Will to find a role for himself here. Now, I'm not willing to bet on that. I'm definitely not willing to bet on that as a starter for sure either. But I do think if it's an open competition, if P. Will comes into training camp with the right mindset and the right focus, anything's possible there, right? So I think that there's a chance for P. Will that he right now probably is looked at as the dark horse candidate by myself. I would love to hear from you guys on that, whether you think that he should be given more of a chance or be given more credit for his ability to maybe come in there and be the starting small forward. I would love to hear from you guys on that one. But I think that where it stands for me right now is that I don't see it for P. Will. And I think that P. Will's going to have so many guys ahead of him that bring it more consistently than what he has over his career, that it'll be hard for him to get into the starting lineup. Now, can he own a rotation off the bench? Yeah, I think that there's there. But, again, I've learned to never count somebody out. So if P. Will comes in locked in, there's that chance. And much like we said with the other guys, like it would be more defensive focused, but I do think that P. Will, with his ability to be a 40% three-point shooter, now he doesn't take all the ones, and I think that's going to come down to it as well, his willingness to take that shot. But I do think that there's an opportunity for him here as well to maybe carve out himself a starting role. So we'll see. P. Will's a long shot. I'm not mentioning Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry because I think they're more so competing for off the bench. But the same thing can be said for them. Anybody who comes in and brings it this training camp period should have a shot, right? And it should be an open competition. Now, open competitions are only open so much, even when they preach them to be open. But I think there are going to be opportunities there for guys to show what they can bring. And, we've talked about like that 9th, 10th man spot. You got 5 people to 6 players fighting over that 9 or 10 spot. And we'll see that. And one player that I didn't mention as well is Noah Essengate. And I don't think, as being 18 years old on a Billy Donovan coach team, he's going to have a great opportunity to do that. But that's something that's kind of more of a conversation, I think, for this time next year, where we could be talking about Noah Essengate getting into the starting lineup and him and Modest being the starting forwards. And, I think if we end up getting to that place by then, I think that's a really good sign, right? So, we'll see what happens there. But let me know what you guys think on the starting small forward position. Do you think it's going to be more straightforward where it's just going to go to Kevin Huerter? Do you think it's going to go maybe Isaac Okoro, Ayo Dosunmu? Or are you one of the guys that actually think, or one of the people I should say, because it's not only guys, so you're one of those people that think P. Will could have an actual shot here to be the starting small forward and get back to the position that he played his rookie year rather than power forward? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Now, with that said, I do want to talk about this, right? So, of course, we all knew it was going to happen. After Josh Giddey signed his contract, all of the think pieces came out, both good and bad, right? I'm not going to say it's all bad. There have been some that have really pointed out to Josh Giddey and his ability to fill the stat sheet and all those type of things as being something that could be promising for the Chicago Bulls. But, of course, the slander came, right? And there was an article that Ricky O'Donnell actually was like, oh, it's a great article, which had tons of typos, grammatical errors, and all that type of stuff. But you talked about the sense, like Josh Giddey in the knees, right? And it's funny. I never thought that I'd see an article where one of the main takeaways is, hey, look at Josh Giddey and how he bends his knees. It's like, okay, all right. I see where we're going here, right? Now, make no mistake about it. There are always going to be people that have questions about Josh Giddey. And I think one of the most fair things that I think that I've seen people throw as far as concern and doubt around now locking into Josh Giddey is the sense that you have to build your team in a particular way to kind of overcome some of Josh Giddey's shortcomings. And my response to that, and please, anybody who wants to feel free, clip this. My response to that is this. The type of players that you need around Josh Giddey are defenders, a rim protector, three-point shooters, and players that can get out and run. Now, I think when you look at those things, that those are things that most teams want anyway, right? Like, we've seen a prioritization on two-way players. We've seen a prioritization on 3-and-D players. Three-point shooting is at the optimal, desirability in the NBA. Defenders and rim protectors. Hell, look at all the teams that were looking for rim protectors at last year's trade down, and very few made it. And look at the Bulls. So my thing is that in the pieces that you need to make a offense built around Josh Giddey's skill set are typically the pieces that you need on teams anyway. Those are typically the pieces that really good teams are looking for regardless, right? Two-way players, three-point shooters, rim protectors, players that can get out and run in transition. That's where the modern NBA is going. And so while people can make the case, well, Josh Giddey's not a three-point shooter, he's not the most athletic, and so therefore he's not kind of the prototypical type player that you're looking for in modern basketball, my response to that is, okay, but the players that you need around him are. And at $25 million, I'm willing to invest in that. Like, it should be a no-brainer, right? And so I get it, and it was going to be that, and it's going to happen if Kobe gets his money too as well. It's always going to happen. There's always going to be this thing of, all right, now that this player's got their money and we know we're going to be here, how do we now look upon this on what is the downside of it? It happens. It happens naturally, and it's part of the thing, right? The Josh Giddey slander has already started. I wish I could say I was surprised by the Josh Giddey slander already starting, but I'm not, right? And the thing is, when you say things like Josh Giddey has to go out and prove it, and his stands say, what does he have to prove? He's 22 years old. He's already clearly it. No, there are things that you have to prove as far as, can your team win with you being at the helm? And that's something that that's not a knock on Josh. Those type of things aren't knocks on Josh Giddey. That's knocks on any player that signs a fairly large contract and gets an investment from a team, is like, okay, now that you've gotten this, you have to go out and prove that we can win at a high enough level with you being at this position. Now, I've said before, Josh Giddey isn't the superstar acquisition where you're like, oh my God, just by having Josh Giddey here, boom, you should just expect 45 wins. He's not that type of player, not yet. He can ascend to that, maybe as any player has a chance to. But I look at this and maybe I just take more of a straightforward approach and view on this. Is the type of players that you need around Josh Giddey or players that you should want on your team regardless. It'd be different if it was like you have to have a very unique type of player around Josh Giddey that's hard to get. If it's like, well, around Josh Giddey, you specifically need a shooting guard that can score in the high and low post, and that shooting guard has to have back to the basket moves, and therefore it provides no, like that's not the type of players that you need now. Around Josh Giddey. And even, I've talked about the people like, well, if he couldn't fit in OKC, how can he do it anywhere? Well, it was the fact that you had players playing the positions that best suit him. He gets to play his position here now. Let this guy let Josh Giddey come in here and prove y'all wrong. And like I've said before, if Josh Giddey comes in and he plays the way that he believes that he can play and that he says that he's going to play for this Bulls team, and people are still throwing out the same thing, at that point, they're just haters. It's not doubters, right? Those people are going to have their reservations regardless of what Josh Giddey does or does not do. You take that it comes with the territory. So we'll see what happens in regards to the Josh Giddey thing. I'm happy Josh Giddey's here. I think it's a great value on the contract, and we just got to see what him and Kobe are going to go out there and do this season. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.